Good morning. You listen to FloorDaily.net, and I'm Kemp Harr. This morning, my guest is Bruce Zwicker. Most people know the former CEO of J.J. Haynes. Been gone from there for a few years, and I guess last year took on a consulting role with the NWFA, the Hardwood Flooring Association, along with some other companies. Bruce, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Kemp. Good to be with you today.
Did I get that background right? Is that a good recap?
Yeah, I'm doing consulting with onshore U.S. domestic companies, offshore companies, manufacturers, dealers, distributors, basically on strategy and succession and basically advisory and CEO coaching, that kind of thing. Keeping pretty busy.
All right. Well, you and I have been traveling a lot, and I've seen you in many different places. I saw you at Dolmatex in Germany. I think that was your second time to attend that show. And then again, obviously, Surfaces, you've been going there for many years. Let's just start out there. What's your observations and recaps of those two shows?
Well, both of those shows were pretty well attended. I don't think it was stellar attendance, but it was good, and an indication the industry is pretty healthy. Dolmatex was competing with the Bow Construction Show in Munich the next week, so some of the players weren't there. We saw at both shows a lot of LVT, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yeah.
I'd say in the LVT category, there's a continued innovation going on. But, I think the industry is pretty healthy, but it is a slowing growth rate. And that's indicative of maybe a little lighter attendance than we might have seen.
Yeah, well, word on Dolmatex, like I said a minute ago, this is your second time. Last year you went, there was no Bow show. Bow is a show in Munich that takes a lot of the traffic away every other year because it's a show that happens every other year. And, yeah, I mean, I don't know what the swing is. It may tend to be 10 to 15%. Companies like Tarkett and Beaulieu International Group, they decide they're only going to display one place, and so it changes the size of the show. But it's still, let me just tell you, is it worth the trip? Yes, it's worth the trip. I mean, I ran into several new innovation products and got to talk to some people that were doing some things. So it's still where the world comes to talk about what's going on from a trend and innovation standpoint.
Absolutely. Dolmatex Atlanta should be pretty good too. We're looking forward to that as well.
Oh yeah, me too. I'll see you there. That's less than a month away.
Yeah.
Starts at the end of February, and so I guess it's the last day of February, the first 2 days of March. So we'll see you there.
Right.
Let's talk about LVT. Obviously, we've talked before about John Ball's report and about how he's talking about 75% of the growth in the flooring business last year was in that category. So that continues to be, the news from a product standpoint, right?
Right, and the continued evolution of the product, which seems to be in the multi-layer floor covering. A couple things. One is, what are you putting on the surface, and then what are you putting in the core? Mm-hmm. So there's variations going on there, which I think are both a combination of trying to get the cost down as well as add performance characteristics. Right. So we haven't seen the end of the evolution yet.
No, that's right. Let's talk a little in depth about that. We've seen a new core. They're calling it a mineral core that looks a little bit like concrete. There's different constructions depending on what company's doing it. Some still add polymers. Some are making it PVC free. And then on that mineral core, you're seeing two different toppings or two wear surfaces. In many cases, it's a melamine with a photograph, and in other cases, it's real wood, a thin layer of real wood, right?
Exactly. And that real wood category actually fits within the definition that the NWFA has published about what is a definition of wood. And also tile types. And you mentioned, I saw one that was really, truly a concrete center with a stone tile type look on top. The LVT is obviously taking share from a lot of product categories, and most notably recently is in the engineered wood in the low end, but aiming at the tile area as well now with these tile looks and continuing to push the notion of waterproof.
Yeah, no, waterproof. That's an interesting topic because
it is.
People are jumping in with both feet on that, and we all know if a floating floor, if water gets under it, there might be an issue. But
exactly.
But they're talking about the performance of the product itself and the fact you can stick it in an aquarium for several days and it won't change it. Real quick, one other comment about this multi-layered flooring and why they're coming up with some of these cores. I had a great interview with Thomas Bart about this. Like you said a minute ago, it's about performance, and they're looking at dimensional stability with temperature change. They're looking at sound performance, because, in, I guess, multi-family homes and stuff like that, there's been an issue there, so they're addressing that. They're addressing the scratches on the surface, so they're continuing to make that product perform better, right?
Exactly. I was just in a multi-family development project and was was with some other people, and we walked on a surface, and they swore it was wood. Of course, it wasn't.
Yeah.
But to the average consumer, sometimes they can't tell the difference. And then the tile type look. So it's really interesting if you think about real wood and real tile, and both the tile associations combined their efforts into a real tile campaign, and the National Wood Flooring Association now has the Real Wood, Real Life campaign. And, my thought is that neither one of these categories, at the medium and the high end, is really in much jeopardy from the LVT types. In the case of tile, the tile is truly the really waterproof type of product. Mm-hmm. But at the low end, in a certain value point, price point, the consumer is going to opt for the LVT types.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so interesting. You mentioned that. I wrote an editorial in Floor Focus, which is going to be on the streets next week, and I'm talking just about that. I mean, let's admit it. If you're talking about the NWFA, which you helped drive this, but this Real Wood, Real Life campaign, it's talking about the benefit of living on real hardwood floors. Mm-hmm. I mean, what I'm saying here in my editorial is that, hey, let's remember these products do compete with each other. Why not talk about the benefits of one versus another? And tile, the Y Tile program's been out now for 2 years. It's been pretty successful. They continue to fund it. So I applaud both of those efforts.
I agree.
Yeah, let's move on to another topic real quick, if you don't mind. The fact that we're looking at probably slow growth in 19, slower than what we've seen. Usually flooring grows about 1 or 2 points above GDP. Some people are saying it might be a little slower this year. Talk about that, if you would.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just had a conversation yesterday with an industry expert about this. So 2017 is probably the high point of the demand growth for the total flooring category, whether it was 5 or 5.5%. I don't think our statistics are that accurate as an industry, but someplace in there. The year before was probably about 4.5%. Mm-hmm. So what's going to happen this year? Well, in 2018, let's say it was 4.5% for the sake of argument. Some of that was inventory build pre-tariff. Mm-hmm. So this year, the first half is going to be slower than the second half. We work through that inventory, and production will probably be less in the first quarter. So maybe we're looking at 3% in the first half, mm-hmm. maybe 4% in the second half, God willing. Yeah. So we're probably looking at 3.5%. So we may lose, a full point of growth on a year-over-year basis. But, if you go back a few years, 3.5% was kind of the normal for the industry coming out of the Great Recession.
Right.
And that would be someplace around 50 to 100 basis points, maybe, better than GDP. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of settling back into what's kind of normal for the floor covering industry.
Right.
But when you're in a zero-sum game, then it comes down to the inter-product category competition, and then the intra-product category competition as well. Mm-hmm. So it all comes down to, do you have a product that's a better mousetrap? Yeah. And there's a lot of better mousetraps being built all over.
You say zero sum. Let me explain that real quick for those people who might understand that. What you're talking about is with very little growth, for you to grow, you have to take it from somebody else. And
exactly.
So that's what you're talking about. And, we were encouraged at Surfaces to see some nice, really good-looking carpet, some high styling, to have more entries, more introductions of real hardwood products. So people are going in other areas than just pure LVT, and so it's going to be interesting to see what the consumer buys this year.
Exactly, and I think of LVT almost like carpet, because carpet, there's all different kinds of carpet, mm-hmm. and what materials are you using, what treatments, what performance characteristics can you add. LVT is a very confusing category from a definitional standpoint, but if you think of it as multi-layer floor covering, the same kind of characteristics are there relative to, say, a carpet type of product portfolio with all different kinds of performance characteristics for different markets. Mm-hmm. So, it's going to be a lot of product competition on top of what will be a lower average selling price. As we enter a slower growth, things get more competitive. Imports aren't going away. The 10% tariff didn't have a really huge effect. It's going to be a little tougher going forward.
Yeah. Real quick before we run out of time, early last week, there was a big news day. I believe it was last Tuesday, and we saw where Brian Carson's taken over with AHF Products. That's the Armstrong hardwood business that's been bought by a private equity firm. So I know you had a great relationship with Armstrong when your days at Haynes. So that's an interesting piece of news, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's the industry is reorganizing. I mean, Mohawk is reorganizing, their management structure. AHF has got Brian Carson now. I mean, I think he's the right guy.
Yeah.
If they focus on products and price and support for distributors and figure out their branding, they can be successful. But it's an interesting play. What are they going to do after they sort out the base business? We've seen a distributor just lately, Cronin, long-standing great distributor, they're going away. It's a sign of how difficult it is, and I think you will see continued reorganization, consolidation in the industry as it slows.
Heidi Cronin running that 100-year-old business, and it was sad news to hear last week. So
very sad. Yeah, she's a great person.
All right, Bruce, the time runs by when we're on these conversations. You're so full of great information. Thanks for spending time with me and my listeners. Again, been talking to Bruce Zwicker, consultant in the business, and you've been listening to Kemp Harr and FloorDaily.net.